This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance. They'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner. However you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
I don't usually call Slate's Supreme Court reporter, Mark Joseph Stern, and ask him to tell me the plot of a children's book. But there's a first time for everything, right? The book I wanted Mark to tell me about is called Uncle Bobby's Wedding.
Okay, Uncle Bobby's Wedding is about a little girl, Chloe, who has a favorite uncle, Bobby, who is getting married to his longtime boyfriend, Jamie. Chloe is initially distraught that Uncle Bobby is getting married, not because he's getting married to a man, but because she is worried that he won't have as much free time to spend with her.
So far, so fine. Except last week, this book wound up in the hands of Supreme Court Justice Sam Alito.
Do you think it's fair to say that all that is done in Uncle Bobby's Wedding is to expose children to the fact that there are men who marry other men?
No, Your Honor, and this court in Obergefell promised that
Justice Alito was picking apart the plot of this storybook in open court last week because the justices are being asked to decide if Uncle Bobby's Wedding, and books like it, should be freely available in public schools. The case is known as Mahmoud v. Taylor.
Justice Alito hated this book, 1 star on Goodreads. He would have given it 0 if he could. He claimed that the book has a moral message, which is that children who have reservations about same-sex marriage and homosexuality just need to get over them and get with the program.
I don't think anybody can read that and say, well, this is just telling children that there are occasions when men marry other men. Uncle Bobby gets married to his boyfriend, Jamie, and everybody's happy, and everything is, it portrays this. Everyone accepts this, except for the little girl, Chloe, who has reservations about it. But her mother corrects her. No, you shouldn't have any reservations about this. As I said, it has a clear moral message.
Wait a minute. The reservation is about...
Can I finish, please? It has a clear moral message, and it may be a good message. It's just a message that a lot of religious people disagree with.
There was something so weird and surreal about Alito and Justice Sotomayor debating the meaning of this book extensively during oral arguments. Justice Sotomayor actually cut off Alito while he was talking, which is verboten. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to go through the lawyer arguing for you. Justice Sotomayor actually interrupted Alito and was like, wait a minute, that is not why Chloe is concerned about the marriage. And the chiefs had to step in and let Alito finish, and he was all pissed off. And then she came back to it later, and then he came back to it later and made some crack about how they could have a book club over Uncle Bobby's Wedding. And I know that this might sound like a kind of like idiosyncratic sideshow, but I actually think it does get to the heart of what is so sick about this case.
Mark checked out Uncle Bobby's Wedding at the library to make sure he understood its intent right. He even called up the book's author. And everyone here agrees. The book is about a little girl who is worried her uncle isn't going to be able to spend time with her anymore. But simply having gay characters in the mix alarmed the more conservative justices. Ian Millhiser over at Fox took a look at this case, and he had this clarifying way of putting it. He said, if the justices rule the way they seem ready to rule here, which is to give parents the right to essentially veto certain books for their kids. It basically means Florida's Don't Say Gay law for the whole country.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I totally agree.
This case is not the only one about education and religion that the justices are going to be considering this month. Both deal with basically how conservative schools can be. I wonder how the docket this year, when it comes to these issues, feels to the advocates you speak with.
The advocates who defend public education are terrified. They are terrified because it looks like the Supreme Court is on the brink of working a revolution in public education that would inject vastly more religious control over the curricula of public schools and also really open the floodgates to public funding of private religious schools.
Today on the show, the Supreme Court is about to weigh in on what happens inside your kid's school. What are they going to decide? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found, and that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration.
Missions to Mars, driverless cars, AI chatbots. Feels like we're already living in the future. Well, Robinhood is built for the future of trading. Robinhood's intuitive design makes trading seamless. On Robinhood, traders have access to popular stocks and ETFs 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, so you can keep up with today's fast-paced markets. Spot opportunities and take control of your trades with tools like screeners, simulated returns, and strategy builder. You can now even trade your favorite assets all in one place. Robinhood offers competitive pricing with commission-free trades on stock and ETF options and some of the lowest margin rates among leading brokerages. The future of trading is fast, powerful, and precise. Experience it now on Robinhood. Sign up today. Investing is risky. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Trading during extended hours involves additional risks. Other fees may apply.
Let's dig into the case that got Justice Alito so agitated first. This is Mahmoud v. Taylor. And it's brought by religious families in a Maryland school district. It's actually a county right outside of D.C. that I think a couple of the justices live in. And I actually went to school there, K through 12, the whole time, Montgomery County. What were the books these parents objected to? How did this case reach the court? Just tell me the story.
A few years ago, the Montgomery County Board of Education decided to diversify its curriculum to try to reflect the diversity of the student body. Among other things, the board introduced a handful of picture books to classrooms that feature LGBTQ characters. The most controversial is called Pride Puppy. And it's about a puppy who goes to Pride, and it's controversial because he sees drag queens. That one was actually pulled from the shelves by the board, so it's no longer in classrooms.
Just because drag queens exist in it?
Just because they exist in it, yes.
Like the puppy's not gay.
Yeah, so far as we know, this is not Legally Blonde 2. That's a deep cut. But yes, the puppy is not gay. The puppy is just seeing LGBTQ people, including drag queens. And that is, I guess it was so offensive that the board felt it had to pull it from the shelves. But there are other books that are still in the classroom and they feature LGBTQ characters. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. It's not like these are overt gay propaganda items. Like these are just books that show families that have LGBTQ people in them, including some that have transgender youth and some that have same-sex parents.
So they reflect the world. Is it worth talking about who the parents are here who are suing? Because they're an incredibly diverse group.
They sure are. So some of them are conservative Christians and conservative Catholics. Some of them are Orthodox Christians, many of them immigrants from Ethiopia. And some of them are Muslim parents, conservative Muslim parents. So it is an array of religious parents, all of whom banded together for the cause of preventing their children who are enrolled in Montgomery County Public Schools from ever seeing these books.
Huh. So we don't know whether these books were actually taught in the classroom, right? Like, we just know that they were made available, that they were recommended by the school district?
Yeah, and that ambiguity, that uncertainty points to a huge problem in this case. There's barely any factual record. The plaintiffs pushed this up to the Supreme Court as fast as they could, and the Supreme Court granted it prematurely, in my view, before the federal judge overseeing the case had any real opportunity to do fact-finding and to figure out what exactly happened here. So, for instance, we don't know if these books were simply sitting on the shelf in a classroom, or whether teachers were taking out these books and reading them during story hour, or whether librarians were teaching these books to kids. We don't know how, quote, exposed any children were to these books. We just know that they were somewhere within the schools for some period of time.
We do know that the district initially let some kids opt out of hearing readings of these books, I guess. So why did they stop doing that?
So as soon as these books appeared, a group of religious parents got so offended that they started coordinating this kind of mass opt-out scheme. They bombarded the school district with demands that their children be allowed to opt out. The school district had a policy in place for opt-outs for very narrow circumstances, specifically for sex education, for health and sexuality class, basically for topics that touched on human sexuality. And so the district kind of expanded it initially to cover parents who didn't want their kids to see these picture books that featured LGBTQ characters. The district stopped because it was so inundated with these demands that it basically could not keep these books on the shelf anymore. The system had become unworkable. So many kids were opting out that teachers were sort of put to this choice where they could either try to keep the book in their classroom, but know that, many, many students would walk out if they ever took it off the shelf. Or the teacher would just refuse to read the book, or maybe hide it, conceal it, take it out of the classroom altogether because she or he did not want to face a federal lawsuit if a child was exposed to it without their parents' permission.
How did this go at oral arguments?
Horribly.
We've alluded to it a little bit. Yeah.
Horribly.
Worse than you expected?
So you have Brett Kavanaugh essentially comparing the Maryland and Montgomery County School Board to the anti-Catholic persecutors of England in the 1600s, saying Maryland. Okay, so he's a Montgomery County lifer, right? And he really brought that energy to the arguments. He was like, as a Montgomery County lifelong resident, I'm mystified how this happened.
As the father of daughters. Yes, continue, Brett, continue.
Yes, indeed. Because he said, Maryland was founded as a sanctuary for religious freedom against anti-Catholic persecution. And now you're turning around and you're persecuting all of these religious people. How dare you? He was disgusted and offended. I mean, I think, if I had been in the courtroom, I would have seen his face turning bright beet red. I couldn't bear to be there, frankly, for this case. I was like, for mental health purposes, again, I will sit at home and listen. I don't even want to see their faces. But you could hear Brett getting really, really mad.
I assume because of your tone and what you've written that it doesn't sound like the liberal justices have the majority here.
No. It became clear almost immediately this is going to be a 6-3 decision. I will say Justice Elena Kagan had some concerns about how the school board acted. And you kind of heard her trying to build bridges to the majority, maybe crafting some kind of compromise that would rule against the school board here, claiming that they acted kind of rashly and irresponsibly, but limiting the broader damage to public education. And the conservative justices were just not interested. They were just not having it. They want to go big in this case. They want a decision that applies not just to Montgomery County, but to every public school district in the entire country. They want to send a message that these woke bureaucrats do not get to teach children that other kinds of families exist and that other ideas exist. They want to create a kind of enclave for these parents within public schools where their children will never be exposed to difference.
Can I have like a personal moment here?
Please.
Because I have a 10-year-old. She goes to public school in New York City. And I was walking her home a couple months back, and she was telling me how she'd gotten really stressed out in class and took a breather to read a book. And the book that she chose was about Stonewall. And she really had absorbed it, like 100%. She was like, Mom, do you know what the lesbians were chanting at Stonewall? Like she really knew. Okay. But then I also like listened to her a little bit. And she was genuinely excited about sharing what she learned in the book. She was interested in it. She wanted to discuss it with me. And to me, in the end, I'm like, you can't take away that win. And I just sort of wonder, like, in a world where the justices rule the way you imagine they're going to rule, would my daughter even be able to encounter a book like this in her public school?
No, I don't think so. I really don't. Even in a progressive school district, there are always going to be conservative religious parents. And, I think one of the kind of practical concerns here that largely got swallowed up in arguments is that teachers are scared of being sued. School districts are scared of being sued. Federal lawsuits are no joke. And this decision, if it's as big as I fear it will be, would have a massive chilling effect just on the materials that are in classrooms and the kinds of free speech and expression that teachers are willing to engage in. There is going to be an immense amount of self-censorship if parents are given this sweeping right to opt their children out from mere exposure to certain kinds of materials. I think it would be, unfortunately, totally rational for a school district to pull the book about Stonewall, to pull the book about the Pride Parade, to pull the book that features a gay uncle, rather than risk some ruinous federal lawsuit that sucks up all of the money that they had hoped to spend on free lunches for underprivileged children. Like, that is what the plaintiffs ultimately are trying to engineer here, in my view, or at least that's what their lawyers are trying to engineer. They keep saying it's nothing more than an opt-out here and there. But if you look at sort of the master scheme here and where this would lead if the justices do go big, I don't think that even New York City's public schools could afford to risk having a book about Stonewall in the classroom, because they could get hit with a religious liberty lawsuit by a disgruntled parent, and that could consume years of their lives and millions of dollars.
Some have criticized Montgomery County's actions here. They've basically said, when it was clear that this lawsuit was just gonna rocket through the docket, they could have gone back to having an opt-out choice for parents of young kids. What do you say to someone who says, Montgomery County, you made this situation, and now it's gonna have potentially really harmful ramifications all over the country?
So here's what I'll say. The Montgomery County officials who crafted and responded to this policy change did not cover themselves in glory. They really should have taken every step in super close consultation with lawyers who are available in these situations. And it's clear that they didn't. Some county officials said things during public meetings that have been plucked out of the sparse record and bandied about as proof of anti-religious animus, saying that these complaints are a reflection of bigotry. You can't say that if you're an official with this Supreme Court looming over everything you do. I want to acknowledge that they had good intentions, right? There are a ton of LGBTQ students in the system. There are a ton of LGBTQ families who have kids who deserve to feel represented and seen. They were trying to do something good. But the unfortunate reality is that in this decade, every effort to increase diversity, whether it's LGBTQ diversity, racial diversity, gender diversity, whatever, it's all going to be closely overseen and scrutinized by a Supreme Court that is kind of anti-DEI, that is fairly anti-LGBTQ, that is inherently skeptical of this stuff. And if it can all be reframed into a narrative about anti-religious persecution, this Supreme Court is going to lunge at the first opportunity.
After the break, how a second case in front of the Supreme Court could further reshape the role of religion in public schools. This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's smart to always have a few financial goals, and here's a really smart one you can set: earning cash back on what you buy every day. With Discover, you can. Get this. Discover automatically matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Seriously, all of it. Discover trusts you to make smart decisions. After all, you listen to this podcast. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
Missions to Mars, driverless cars, AI chatbots. Feels like we're already living in the future. Well, Robinhood is built for the future of trading. Robinhood's intuitive design makes trading seamless. On Robinhood, traders have access to popular stocks and ETFs 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, so you can keep up with today's fast-paced markets. Spot opportunities and take control of your trades with tools like screeners, simulated returns, and strategy builder. You can now even trade your favorite assets all in one place. Robinhood offers competitive pricing with commission-free trades on stock and ETF options and some of the lowest margin rates among leading brokerages. The future of trading is fast, powerful, and precise. Experience it now on Robinhood. Sign up today. Investing is risky. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Trading during extended hours involves additional risks. Other fees may apply.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states and situations.
Okay, I want to talk about another case, one that's going to be argued this week, because it also deals with religion in public schools, and a lot of educators are frankly concerned about it. It's called Oklahoma Statewide Charter School Board v. Drummond. It's about a school named St. Isidore's, a Catholic charter school in Oklahoma. So tell me about this case and what it shares and how it deviates from the case we just heard about.
Yeah, so this is the very first Catholic charter school ever created in the United States.
Ever?
Ever. The Oklahoma body that governs charter schools narrowly approved this school to operate. It will be a virtual school, primarily online learning, but it will be a fully accredited school. And it will also be a fully Catholic school rooted in the Catholic Church's teachings. It will expect students and teachers alike to adhere to Catholic doctrine and dogma. And as of right now, it is demanding money from the state of Oklahoma, taxpayer dollars, in order to operate. It is claiming that it has a right to access the public funds that all other charter schools in the state receive in order to provide a Catholic education. So after the Oklahoma body that governs these schools approved St. Isidore, the Oklahoma Attorney General, Gunther Drummond, filed a lawsuit. Now, Drummond is a conservative Republican. Okay, he is not a flaming liberal. I believe that he is a devout man himself. But he said, I have a duty to defend the Oklahoma Constitution.
And the Oklahoma Constitution says?
It's very, very clear that no public money shall ever be appropriated or used directly or indirectly for the use, benefit, or support of any sect, church, denomination, or system of religion or sectarian institution. And it also says in a separate but equally important provision that there must be the establishment and maintenance of a system of public schools which shall be open to all the children of the state and free from sectarian control.
So it's appealed from the state Supreme Court to the Supreme Court?
Yes. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett recuses from the case because one of her close friends, I think this is why, she didn't give an explanation, but one of her close friends is leading counsel representing the school. And so I think she recused out of an abundance of caution, which, props to her for having some basic conception of ethics. I admire that. But I think it's also pretty concerning that even with Barrett recused, the justices took up this case because it requires 4 votes to take up a case. So I think it's pretty clear that at least 4 conservatives are ready to rule for the charter school, and they are confident that there's a 5th who's ready to join them.
Aren't religious charter schools already getting funding in some states around the country?
So some charter schools have religious affiliations, but they provide secular education and they fully abide by all of the rules and requirements for every other school. At least they claim to. Charter schools, until now, have agreed to play by the ground rules of the public education system because they are inherently and fundamentally public schools. A bunch of courts have found that to be true. Here, this school, St. Isidore, is somehow claiming it's not a public school, but I think it's very clear in terms of, how the law conceptualizes these institutions. These are public schools, and so they have to abide by some basic guarantees of secular education.
Oh, so this Catholic school is both saying it doesn't have to abide by the rules of education, and it is a very Catholic place where you're required to go to mass and things?
That's right. So this school is arguing that it gets to operate fully as an organ of the church, which it is, to be clear. This is part of the Catholic Church. This is not some kind of separate, independent, spin-off institution that just has some affiliation with the Catholic Church. This is the Catholic Church opening a charter school. If the Supreme Court sides with the church in this case and says it has a First Amendment right to be recognized and funded by the state, that to me is a serious, serious threat to religious liberty that has been all but erased from this case.
This case is really doing a lot.
It's doing so much and getting so little attention. And I think this is key to understanding the Supreme Court operating in the Trump era. Yes, we're all paying attention to these clashes with the Trump administration, and we're all wondering, when is the Supreme Court going to stand up to Trump? And is it going to draw the line here? Is it going to preserve its own power? But you have to remember, the Supreme Court has its own independent agenda that it is pursuing at a rapid clip. Yes, it often aligns with the Trump administration. Occasionally it doesn't. But when it does, as here, the Supreme Court is going to move forward as quickly and aggressively and recklessly as it wants. And so while all eyes are on Trump doing these illegal deportations and suppressing freedom of speech and all these wild cases, the Supreme Court is just chugging along, threatening the entire structure of public education in America. And most people aren't really paying attention to it because it's super complicated and takes an hour to explain.
Yeah, so it strikes me looking at these 2 cases, the Montgomery County one about the books and the charter schools one out of Oklahoma, they mirror each other in an interesting way. You have, in one case, the Maryland one, the argument is that exposure to course material about gay families or students is harmful. The parents say their kids are being indoctrinated, although we talked about that a little bit. They're really just being exposed to narratives about the world around them. And then in this other case about the Oklahoma school, the argument is actually there's no problem indoctrinating kids. That's required, actually. I don't understand how you could rule in favor of the parents in Maryland and also rule in favor of the Catholic school in Oklahoma. Isn't there a fundamental tension here, or am I missing something?
There is a fundamental tension that is really just a hypocrisy, whereby I think the Supreme Court will likely say that it is indoctrination and brainwashing for a school to simply have books in the classroom and maybe have them read from time to time by the teacher that feature LGBTQ characters, but that it is no problem at all under the First Amendment to have state funding go directly to Catholic schools that will actively indoctrinate and proselytize students with the Catholic faith. There is this game being played where somehow mere exposure to a book with a same-sex couple is forbidden indoctrination, but active proselytization of students in one particular faith, coercive proselytization, that is not a problem at all. And it's impossible to square those things. I mean, you really have to bend and twist and contort the First Amendment to get to a place where one of those is constitutionally problematic and the other is constitutionally mandated. But that is the place that we are somehow in now.
Mark Joseph Stern, I'm really grateful for you coming on the show and explaining all this to me.
Thanks, Mary.
Mark Joseph Stern is a senior writer here at Slate. You can hear more of his amazing Supreme Court analysis on our sister podcast, Amicus. Dahlia Lithwick hosts over there. She and Mark do an amazing job of explaining everything going on at the courts. If you don't check it out already, please do it now. One more thing before we go. Remember how at the top we talked about Uncle Bobby's Wedding, the children's book that Mark checked out of the library to see if Justice Alito was reading it right? Turns out the people who worked at Mark's local public library, they had some thoughts about the Supreme Court weighing in here.
And I told the children's librarian the whole story, the whole sordid tale of why I was getting Uncle Bobby's Wedding. And she was furious. And she was like, well, you know what that means? This book is going on our public display section immediately, which she calls the Librarians Are Mad display, where DC librarians like to put up banned and challenged books. So even if the children of Montgomery County, Maryland will no longer be reading Uncle Bobby's Wedding, the children of the District of Columbia will have it in their faces when they walk into the MLK library.
And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Ethan Oberman, and Madeline Ducharme. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go check me out on Blue Sky. I post pictures there, little stories from my life. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time. This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's smart to always have a few financial goals. And here's a really smart one you can set: earning cash back on what you buy every day. With Discover, you can. Get this. Discover automatically matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Seriously, all of it. Discover trusts you to make smart decisions. After all, you listen to this podcast. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.